So hello, and this video, as the title suggests, is about debt pressure. Now, I suppose the title's a little dull, and for a lot of people it might be boring because very quickly the notion of debt, they'll be able to understand very quickly. They'll simply know, yeah, that's money that you don't have or debts that you have, and nobody likes debts. But for most people, debt is a massive part of their life, believe it or not. And even people that think that they don't have debt, in actual fact, they do have debt. Now, many people will have a mortgage for a house, and if you do have a mortgage, that is debt. Now, that individual might not have any other debt, but in actual fact, I'm finding that most every person you come across has debt. Now, it is quite interesting why that happens. It's interesting when you meet someone that really has no debt. They will tell you that the house that they live in, there's no debt on it. They have credit cards, but they pay them off every single week and month, and that they never pay interest. And they have a savings account and a pension savings account and a normal account, and there is no debt. And I've met people in that situation, and I always find it very interesting. Why is that? Are they very good with money, or are they very fortunate and they simply have a lot of money? Or do they consciously make the decision to never be in a position where they have debt, even to the point of they would never borrow 10 euros off their friend to buy something because they'd forgotten their cash. They simply don't want ever to be in a position where they're in debt. Now, in business, that behavior is good if you can afford to have that opinion, but most of the time it tends to lead that you're very averse from risk. You don't take risk, you don't take chances, so it can mean that you're a very, very safe person. Now, sometimes in business, being very safe, staying away from debt, is a key to success. I suppose it is subject and context dependent. We know that some successful business people, have very successfully used debt, to achieve something greater. They've borrowed money, there is interest on that, and they've used that money to create a new service or product. It has been successful, and their receipts for that investment, for that debt, have been way greater than the original debt and the cost of that debt. So it can work. But so I suppose that we have, two areas of debt here. For example, in the banking finance world, debt is really a word that's attached to something that many businesses will want, and they attach a cost to it, and it's simply a tool to do a job. So if you're a business person, if you're in venture capital or private equity, or other financial products, debt is an object, is a thing that does a job, and it has a cost to it. That cost is repayments, a management fee, an interest fee, that sort of thing. And very briefly, for the individual, debt is the same thing. It will have interest. There will be an administration cost, interest costs, and then repayments. Bundled in, so every month you have to pay an amount of money back that covers the interest and administration plus a repayment part of that debt. Now, the world that we live in means that debt has become it's a part of life. Actually, I should make the distinction between business debt over here and personal debt here. And maybe I should even break it down one level further and talk about unsecured personal debt. And when I say that, I'm really talking about credit cards that most of us have, in the country that I'm in. And so unsecured debt is credit cards. And then you have secured debt. So that might be a business loan or a mortgage. It tends to be those things, or different flavors of them, but it's where the debt is secured against some other asset that you own or you have access to. And so I suppose we've got three areas there really. So we have business debt, business finance. We have secured debt, which is a mortgage or another large debt that's secured against an asset that you own or you have access to, or unsecured debt, credit cards. I suppose that's a good reference point to make here. Now, in the news recently, and it has been mentioned many times, because of the cost of living crisis that we're in. So right now, if you listen to the news, mainstream news media, they seem to be very, they mention often a cost of living crisis. And, that's a very real crisis actually. Things are getting more expensive. And it does feel like most of us are experiencing much less disposable income in our pockets every month because prices are increasing and income has stayed the same or decreasing. In effect, for many people, it's actually decreasing. The disposable income is decreasing because the cost of living is increasing. Now, one of the things I was listening to just the other day, and I thought, this is true for both business and the individual, whether it's a business loan, a secured loan, or an unsecured loan. And it's where, by accident, the decision maker of the ownership of that debt has actually, missed the ball, and factors beyond them have got to a point where that their debt obligations are starting to be greater than their monthly income. Now, that can happen for a business, it can happen for an individual with a secured loan, with an unsecured loan. There's a lot of pressure around things changing beyond a person's control that impact their ability to repay debt. And it's one of the things that I'm aware of. And in business, people have to deal with this. And this pressure is crushing. It's crushing for the individual with secured and unsecured debt because, it doesn't feel nice. And you might survive a month or two because you can pay the minimum bills. But what happens is that, and the same for a business, is that you quickly realize that the disposable income or the cash that you have access to is no longer enough to service all the debt that you have on a monthly basis. And in business, what it can do is consume all of your time. If you are an executive of a business and you have P&L, profit and loss responsibility, it means that it's your job to do something about income of that company or department. And you'll probably have sight of debt that you have as a business, and you've got to pay those minimum payments because if you don't, it triggers the contract. And often non-payment triggers clauses in the contract that mean that the lender has the right to then rely on the law to allow them to get their money back. And it's just something that's out of your control. But the exact same thing really happens, with the individual. If you have mortgage payments, actually in the UK, for example, if you are struggling with debt and you speak to your mortgage provider, they are helpful initially, and they certainly will allow some leeway But as long as you make the first move and you contact them and let them know that things are getting tricky, as long as they believe that you are fixing things or you can get hold of money and you can service the mortgage, it's going to be okay. And a very similar thing with credit cards. If you speak to a credit card and let them know that your circumstances have changed and you can't service that debt, it's because you are making the first move. You are talking to them first. So it's almost like you are saying to the lender, look, I'm a credible person, I'm fallen on hard times, we've lost a customer, or lost my job, or this problem has happened. Here is a problem, but I'm fixing it. It's always much worse when the lender simply doesn't see the money that they expect, and it triggers them to behave in a way that's the most negative towards you, not through your own fault really. It's just that they're worried that they might not get their money back. Anyway, but the point I'm making is the pressure that debt is. Now, one of the things that the United States, the American culture, especially that American spirit, I've often really admired in business because I've come across it a few times, and it's a little bit like they've culturally developed this way of operating and thinking around debt, and they don't hold it against people or each other. In the UK, if you're a person with loads of debt, your friends and family will probably disown you or dislike you or think you're really stupid. In America, that certainly doesn't happen. If you've got lots of debt, the American person will look at their family member or friend and think, times are tricky. I'm sure that you've got this covered. You'll do something about it. You'll be okay. In the UK, if you tell people that you've got debt, people think you're a pariah and there's something wrong with you. And it is unfortunate. Now, not everyone is like that, but it's certainly a spirit that I've come across before, and I think is so unhelpful, and is something that is done better in the United States, for example. Once again, going back to the UK, if we had a little bit more understanding around debt, it might allow people a little bit more room to say to their friends and family, look, I'm struggling like heck right now with respect to money. I can't really afford to buy this or pay for this. I apologize, just bear with me, I'll get on with it. But the English person won't actually do that. What they will do is pull out their credit card, and buy that dinner for everyone when they are the person, that cannot really afford that. And in fact, in life, I have found this has happened, a few times in business as well, personally. And I bet you, if you think about the times when you've been out with friends and family, and you've bought dinner or something, and so there's a group of people there. More, I suppose, with friends. So you've been out with friends, you've engaged in some business activity, there's a bill at the end, and for some reason, because it's your turn, or maybe it was your idea, but you feel like you've been lumped with the bill. And at that point in time, you might have been, skinned, or people might know that one of the others has a lot more money than you do, but yet you've ended up paying for the bill. And and it's because you haven't wanted to explain to people that you're skint or you've had a bad month, and you don't want to raise that issue. But there is another individual there that has a lot more money, and for some reason they just haven't offered to pay the bill. So that's one of the things that it provides pressure to the person. Actually, what I've just said, that exact same thing happens in business. You can be at an event and you can be a smaller business that is just breaking even, so you've got no real profit in the business, and you can be with competitors or with other businesses, and for some reason you feel obliged to pick up a bill in the full knowledge that the other business there has a lot more disposable income or a lot more profit than you, but yet you feel obliged to pay the bill. And I've often said to friends and family, look, to iron out this situation, when you go out for dinner with your friends, the richest person should pay the bill for dinner, and just have done with it. And I suppose people have looked at me and maybe they thought it's a great idea. I'm sure some people don't agree with that, but I have said that before, to people. Why doesn't the richest person here just pay for that bill? That's certainly the camp I would be in, especially in business. And in fact, in one of my jobs years ago, that's certainly how I operated, because it was just easier to work that way. But also, I might have been trying to gain favor, or in fact I probably wasn't trying to do that. I was probably just trying to make the whole thing easier, and I was probably the boss, so that sort of worked. Anyway, back to pressure. Debt pressure to a family, to an individual, is incredible pressure, and the person might be very good at dealing with work pressure, with social pressure, with other pressures in their life, and they might think that they're able to cope with it, and for a month or two that will be the case. But if this debt pressure continues and starts impacting your positivity or impacting your decision making, slowing you down, actually making things better or creating advantage or creating higher productivity, that could happen. And what I feel like saying to everyone, debt is something that we have to talk about openly, and we have to understand it. Because around debt, the more you understand you have it, and it's there, and you need to deal with it, it enables you and everybody else to take the beast by the horns and deal with it. Because it might be that you're struggling to service some debt, but yet you won't compromise on expensive dinners out. And straight away I would say stop those dinners out, and any buying coffees that are expensive twice a day, any expense that you have that isn't mission critical or isn't absolutely important, just stop it immediately, and just work out what you can afford and deal with that debt as fast as you can. And it's very easy to say that. I know what I've just said is so easy because the context puts other pressures on that decision making anyway. But one of the points I wanted to make in this debt is that we have to understand it's a tool, it's a thing that's there, and it enables people to get by. Yes, of course, if you're loaded, have lots of money, and you're in a position where you don't need it, and you don't really want to deal with it, that's fine. But for most people, they have to have debt, and I'm saying it shouldn't be stigmatized as much as it can be, and it shouldn't be a problem that it is. Although if it is purely self-induced, that's a nightmare. But it needs to be resolved, it needs to be understood, and you need to get out of debt or get yourself into a position where debt is affordable. So I suppose this idea of affordable debt is totally fine, but we know many things in life, the theory and practice are two completely different things. And and debt is a big problem, and it's hard to deal with if things beyond your control have gone against you and you can't service debt. So for this video, that's my point. Let's talk about debt. Let's work out how we service that debt and lower it in our lives. Debt is a tool, it's a thing that can work, so it's something that we can look at, we can understand, no problem there. But let's understand it and let's talk about it. Anyway, I hope everyone is well and speak again soon.